8 o'clock, this is the UK Tonight. Coming up, calls for the police to get serious on shoplifting as the number of offences hits its highest level in 20 years. It's costing businesses thousands of pounds and putting workers in an impossible, sometimes dangerous position. Tonight, I'll speak to a shopkeeper who is taking drastic action, a store worker who's calling for more protection, and a police and crime commissioner who says that officers are taking this seriously. Also ahead, the government announces plans to save £500 million by scrapping military hardware. On the same day, it emerged that Ukraine has used British missiles to strike targets in Russia. Plus, I'll be speaking to the independent advocate for survivors of abuse at Harrods, who says that she believes abuse carried out by Mohammed Al-Fayed extends beyond the department store's walls. And Liam Payne's One Direction bandmates and Simon Cowell are among the mourners at the singer's funeral held today in Buckinghamshire. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. But first tonight, police are appealing for information. This is after the body of a baby was found in Salford this afternoon. The baby was found by a dog walker. Greater Manchester Police say they are following several lines of inquiry. Let's get the latest. Our Chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, joins us now live from Salford. Greg, what do we know at this stage?
Well, the police are saying they know very little about this baby and the remains that were discovered earlier today. There is still a lot of police activity here tonight, a lot of forensic teams coming and going behind that screen, which is the entrance to a park just across from the M61 motorway that passes underneath this road behind me. They say at the moment they have no idea of this baby's gender, certainly its identity, how old the baby may have been, its ethnicity. They're hoping that a post-mortem examination in the next couple of days will give them some of those answers to those questions. They say they are at very early stages of this investigation. As you said, it was someone walking their dog here at about 12:30 today who alerted the police. And Chief Superintendent Neil Blackwood from Greater Manchester Police gave this update on what is happening now.
At this stage, we're following several lines of inquiry, and we are working with local partner agencies to understand who this baby could be, how long they've been here, and how they have sadly died. We're now calling this baby Baby A. All of this is extremely sensitive, and this investigation needs to be handled with the utmost care it deserves, and it is going to take time.
Now, the police say at the moment no one has come forward with that information that they're seeking. They've made a direct appeal to anyone who may have seen anyone in this area over the last couple of days, or a direct appeal to anyone who knows who the parents of this baby might be to come forward. They say, please contact us as soon as you can. They say that information can be anonymous, that appeal for information. They say the most important thing is to find answers for this baby, and that they believe they will start to learn more in the next couple of days.
Greg, thank you. Greg Milam with the latest there from Salford. Next tonight, British Storm Shadow missiles have reportedly been used by Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia for the first time. It comes on the same day the Defence Secretary told Parliament the UK is going to scrap 5 warships, dozens of helicopters and a fleet of drones as part of a drive to save £500 million. John Healey says the savings will be used to modernise the UK's defences. Sky's security and defence editor Deborah Hayes has more.
Footage on social media purportedly captures a Ukrainian missile strike on Russian soil. Sky News has geolocated the video to the village of Marino in the Kursk region. Separate images shared online by Russian military bloggers purport to show fragments of a British-supplied cruise missile found in the same village. Sky News cannot independently verify the pictures, but they emerged as a source revealed Ukraine has fired Storm Shadow missiles for the first time inside Russia. A high-stakes move in defiance of warnings from Moscow of dire consequences. Perhaps surprising then for all this to happen on the same day as the UK announces cuts to its own defences.
For too long, Our soldiers, sailors, aviators have been stuck with old, outdated equipment because ministers wouldn't make the difficult decommissioning decisions. As technology advances at pace, we must move faster towards the future. So today, with full backing from our service chiefs, I can confirm that 6 outdated military capabilities will be taken out of service.
But his opposite number attacked him for failing to say when defence spending will rise.
They have refused to set a pathway to 2.5%, and now we see the consequences. Cuts. Today, they're scrapping key defence capabilities and weakening our national security. Labour have made their choices. They own the consequences.
The equipment set to be axed comprises 5 warships, including 2 amphibious assault vessels used by the Royal Marines, a total of 31 helicopters, with replacements planned to fill the gap, and a fleet of expensive drones. The announcement came as the government conducts a major review of defence, one that it says will draw on lessons learnt from Russia's war in Ukraine. But one of those lessons is that old kit, no matter how dilapidated, is better than no kit, and that mass has a quality of its own. Yet holding on to ageing equipment costs money. And while military chiefs won't relish making reductions at a time of growing threats, they have little choice without a lot of extra cash. Yes, there are going to be new investments, but this round of cuts is not the last. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig. John, let's talk about the timing of this announcement about cuts, because it came as reports suggested that British missiles had been used by Ukraine inside Russia for the first time.
Terrible timing, yes. I was over in the House of Lords a short time ago and I spoke to one senior retired diplomat, now a peer, who said the timing couldn't have been worse, really, given the threat of escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. But the Defence Secretary chose to make this statement. Obviously, he's tried to explain that it's all about modernisation, but he faced a barrage of attack from Conservative politicians. Now, on the question of the use of the Storm missiles, he was challenged by the Shadow Defence Secretary, that's James Cartledge, but all he would say was Ukraine's action on the battlefield speaks for itself. Well, there were some pretty fierce exchanges on those defence cuts. Now, Mr Healy's argument is, first of all, on assault ships, HMS Albion and HMS Bulwark. Well, they were due to be taken out of service anyway at some point. It's cost cutting, but they were in fact 9 and 10 years old respectively, and in the state they're in, they weren't set to sail again. Then helicopters. Well, Chinook helicopters, he said. The 14 oldest, he claimed, in a fleet of 50. Some of them are more than 35 years old, he said. And then on the drones, he said that these were 14 years old, and drone technology in Ukraine has a life cycle of 2 to 3 months, said Mr Healy. But, well, for example, the decommissioning of those Royal Navy vessels was described as a black day for the Marines by the former Defence Committee Chairman, Sir Julian Lewis. And there were claims by the Tory MP, Sir Bernard Jenkin, that Mr Healy had sounded as though he was just clearing out an old cupboard of rubbish, and he warned about the Treasury encroaching on the MOD budget. Well, that wasn't so, said Mr Healy. Any savings would be kept in the MOD and not go back to the Treasury. Significantly, as we heard from Mr Cartledge, still no date about, first of all, when we get that strategic defence review, or when Britain will hit that target. The Tories keep putting pressure on Labour on the 2.5% of GDP defence spending. So, a difficult day for Mr Healy. He tried to sell it as modernisation, but a lot of MPs were not convinced on this day of all days.
OK, John, thank you. John Craig in Westminster for us this evening. Now, next tonight, I want to talk about shoplifting. It's been described as an epidemic that is sweeping the country, with offences at the highest level in 20 years. And Sky News has seen the relentless toll that it takes on small businesses. In just a few days, at one convenience store, we saw staff expected to confront thieves who face no consequences. Shopkeepers say the situation is getting out of control and they don't trust police to tackle the issue, as our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin reports.
So it's quite a busy location, isn't it?
Yeah, so we opened in 2019.
I'm going to spend a few days in a city centre convenience store, which is being plagued by shoplifting. Over the past few months, shop workers here have grappled with thieves. They've been threatened with knives. And this is where the brazen come to steal, knowing there will be no consequences.
It is out of control, if I'm honest with you, across. I mean, we've got 5 stores around the country and it's a big problem in all of them.
We've only just got here, and mid-interview, a man walks into the store, picks up an item and drops it straight into his bag. A shop assistant spots it immediately.
I wonder what was going on there.
I think he's put something in his bag and he's trying to stop him.
The man is told to put the item into a basket, but a few minutes later the basket and its contents are found dumped on the floor and the man has left. Matt looks back on the CCTV cameras because it doesn't add up.
So from my experience, I would say he intended to steal those. He had no intention of paying for that if the colleague hadn't have intervened.
The whole store is covered by cameras and shop worker Anton keeps a close eye on the stock. We watch as a schoolboy comes into the store. He picks up 3 bags of crisps and stuffs them into his bag. Anton is watching. He waits at the front door to see if the boy tries to leave without paying.
Bag. Come on. Put here. Everything. Okay, yeah. All of them.
The bag is opened and out come the crisps.
Okay. Can go out, yeah? Don't come here every time, yeah?
He's told not to come back, but the police aren't called and the boy is allowed to leave.
What was he doing? Another one. Yeah. Stealing.
For more than a decade, anyone shoplifting goods with a value of under £200 have received a less serious punishment. Since then, shoplifting's gone up by 1/3, while those being charged has fallen. A few minutes later, another youngster puts something into his bag. Anton is poised again.
Yeah, don't come here anymore. We are on the CCTV. Get out.
The boy responds by laughing. But this is no joke for independent retailers like Ricky Dougal, who owns this store.
What's generally the response from the police when you call them about an incident?
The police do not want to know, really. When they do come out, they don't want to do anything about it. Because right now, nothing's happening at all. They're not being prosecuted. It's a slap on the wrist, make a note of their name, and that's it.
Retailers are fed up, as an exclusive Sky News and Association of Convenience Stores survey shows. 80% of shopkeepers surveyed had an incident of retail crime in the past week. 94% of shopkeepers say in their experience shoplifting has got worse over the last year. 83% of them are not confident that the police will take action against the perpetrators of retail crime on their premises.
The people committing that crime know that most occasions nothing's going to happen to them.
It seems to be okay for anyone to steal.
Yeah.
Without consequence.
Oh, definitely without consequence.
They can get away with it.
Yeah.
The government says it wants to introduce stronger measures to tackle shoplifting, as well as introducing a separate offence for assaulting shop workers. Retailers say this kind of thing cannot continue, that shoplifting must have consequences if the problem is to be properly tackled. Nick Martin, Sky News.
Well, it's so blatant, isn't it? Let's get into this issue, shall we? I'm joined now by shopkeeper Vince Malone. He's installed AI technology in his shop in Tenby. This is after losing £26,000 because of shoplifting. We're also joined tonight by Michelle Whitehead. She works in a convenience store in Wolverhampton, so is on the front line of this as well. And also with us tonight, Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner Matthew Barber. Good evening to all three of you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about this. It's being described as an epidemic. Vince, I know along with our other guests tonight, you were watching Nick Martin's report there, and this will be a familiar scene to you.
Without a doubt. I mean, I agree with what the ACS have said. It's something that we discuss a lot in the other trade associations I work with, the Fayed. It's something that really concerns me and all my members. It's £26,000 we lost last year, and we made a really large investment in our AI technology to be able to give us a fighting chance to combat this. Yeah? But what we need consequences, and it's something that is a real concern to many retailers up and down the country, as shown in your report.
Yeah, I mean, Vince, we've covered this a lot on the show, and I've spoken to a number of shopkeepers like yourself who have taken matters into their own hands by trying to protect their goods when they feel that the police aren't. Perhaps you can give us a bit of an insight into what you've done, because you've decided to use AI technology. And what effect has it had? How's it helped?
I mean, it's worked on a number of levels. It's gestures. So if someone comes into our shop and they are acting in a suspicious way, they're putting a crisp in their bag or in their pocket, it automatically pings on our headsets that all the team are wearing. It'll tell them that there's suspicious activity or stealing happening. And then that allows us then to go and either confront or, like happened in the video there, we'll take a basket along and encourage them to use a basket. And I think what it's done for us is it's allowed us to identify where the problems are, and it's allowed us to tackle it a little bit more overtly, so we can go forward and say that we've seen you. But there's always that risk of it going a little bit further and then violence or abusive behaviour, and that's something that we're very keen to make sure that we protect ourselves, protect our team, and protect our customers as well.
Yeah, Vince, I'm going to bring in Michelle Whitehead, who works in a convenience store. Michelle, you're very much on the front line of this. There's been a massive increase in shoplifting, and from what we've been hearing, the nature of the crime has changed as well. I mean, I haven't got into it with Vince, but I know he doesn't like the term shoplifting. It's retail crime. Shoplifting makes it sound like, you're nicking the odd bar of chocolate, which does happen. But actually, you're sometimes in a really difficult and sometimes dangerous situation.
Yeah, we call it organised crime, to be honest with you, because they come in booted and tooted. They've got their balaclavas on, their gloves on, they've got their bags ready, they know where they're going to, swipe the shelves, and then they're out. So it's not shoplifting, it's looting.
And Michelle, what do you do in that situation then? What's the sequence of events? Because in Nick Martin's report there, 83% of shop workers, I beg your pardon, said they had no confidence in the police. I mean, shoplifters probably don't have confidence in the police either because they're doing it so blatantly. But what's your course of action when that happens where you work?
Our company, our policy is to keep ourselves safe. Our lives are more important than products on the shelf. So we thank our company for that. We really do. They've given us cameras, headsets and everything. But you do get frustrated because you've just spent 2 hours filling those shelves up for someone to come in and raid it. So you do go over to them and you do say, could you please put that back on the shelves? Then you'll get maybe something thrown at you or verbally abused or pushed out the way. But initially, our company is let them take it because our lives are worth more than that product that they're pinching off the shelf.
Yeah, your employer, and as Vince was saying there, you've got the tools to tackle this and identify the problem, and in a way, do some of the police work for the police in terms of gathering evidence, identifying, who's nicking stuff. But do you call the police? And what is the police's response?
We do call the police. I just believe there's not enough of them on the ground. I think if there was more policing, they'd come out and help us. And at the moment, I mean, the law is changing. Less than £200 it used to be. So it wasn't worth the police coming out. They'd just give you a crime number. it's a little bit different now. I mean, we are working with the police. Well, my company is. So we are seeing that little bit of difference. So it really has to come from the top. If the law changes, then it filters down and we will get the help. And I do believe that this government are going to do their best to try and tackle this epidemic that's going on.
Yeah, and Labour had talked about assaulting or, you know, harming a shop worker to be made a specific crime in itself. Is that something you want to see? Because, you know, you are being targeted, and those coming in, and as you said, those who are organised are coming in to take stuff and you're not getting in their way. You could be in real danger. If you had better protection, would you feel safer if that was a specific law?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, I'm on the front line. There's lots of us, and we want protection. We want help. So my company fitted. We had cameras which we could record. So now they're coming in with balaclavas on to cover their faces. Like we do something, and then they do something to prevent us from getting their identity, as you like, to give to the police. So yeah, we welcome the serious offence to come in, abuse us, and steal our products.
Let's bring in the Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner, Matthew Barber, because in your area, shoplifting charges have increased by 98%. How have you made a difference?
Well, actually, those numbers have increased now over the last month. Over the last 12 months, that's now up to 111% increase in charges for shoplifting. And it's been a real concerted effort. I made clear to the Chief Constable in Thames Valley that I recognise the scale of the problem and that we really need to tackle it, because it's not just about the loss of stock, important though that is, but as you've just heard, it's about the impact that it has on staff, on small businesses. It has a real impact on people's lives. People will be scared to go to work. That has a real impact that really matters. So what we've been doing is improving the reporting for businesses, making it easier for businesses to report and to share intelligence like CCTV, focusing on prolific offenders. We know that a vast amount of shoplifting, certainly the organised crime that you've heard about there from Michelle, will be committed by a relatively small number of people. So each of our local policing areas in Thames Valley have identified their top 20 perpetrators and frankly, just going after the bad guys and getting them locked up. And we've had some real success in targeting those most prolific offenders. Now, of course, we haven't solved the problem yet in Thames Valley, but it is about that concerted effort to recognise this really does matter. The police need to respond and need to work in partnership with businesses. You know, some of those things that you've heard about there that Vince has done are fantastic. Businesses need to work together with the police to prevent crime. That really matters. And we've established a local partnership with organisations like the Association of Convenience Stores that you did your joint report with, so that they are working collectively with the police to tackle problems that might arise, to focus on prolific offenders, but also to start working on the supply chain, because that's the bit that nobody ever talks about. Certainly in the case of organised gangs, these goods are being sold somewhere. They're not just being used for someone's own private consumption. So we need to look at that whole supply chain and identify where the criminals are selling these things.
111% increase, I think, was the figure you quoted there in terms of shoplifting charges by your police force. What percentage of call-outs from shops do you attend? Because we just heard Michelle there saying that she doesn't feel that there are enough police to attend every call for every case of shoplifting.
So I think what I've been really keen to do with retailers is to set expectations. So if you've got a case of some shoplifting that's taken place earlier in the day and someone will spot on CCTV, they've identified a suspect, you don't necessarily need the police to turn up to that offence, because it can be the CCTV can be sent in, you can take statements electronically or over the phone. But what retailers really need to know is when they've got someone in that store, then where they've perhaps detained someone, that the police will attend. And that is the expectation that I have of Thames Valley Police. We monitor those. So we're up in, I think, the 90% mark of where you've got someone in the store, the police will seek to attend. And often what you see on social media can create a false impression sometimes. We had a really nasty case that was shared on social media about a month or so ago, showing criminals behind a counter in a convenience store, ransacking the place, as sadly too often that you see. And of course, that creates the impression that the police are doing nothing. In reality, in that case, the police attended, they identified the offenders. Within 3 days, both of those men were in custody and they've been charged with burglary offences, not just shoplifting. So actually, the police response can be really positive, but we need to make sure that when the retailers really need someone to be there, that they are there. But we set those expectations so that actually, if you don't need a police attendance now, much better that the police can get on and investigate that crime rather than simply attending for the sake of it, and really focusing on those crimes that can be solved.
OK, you've said a lot of good stuff there. I'm going to put that to Vince, our shopkeeper in Tenby, West Wales, who's been listening to that. Vince, what do you make there of what the Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner had to say?
I mean, I think, yeah, there's thousands. There's many thousands of postmasters and independent shop owners up and down the country that are listening to this tonight, and that doesn't seem to ring true. I think that from our lived experiences, it doesn't always see that the consequences are being delivered. We've had an individual that was caught on our CCTV because he stole a very small amount of alcohol, but then he abused our team at the time. He was arrested. It went to court, but he pleaded not guilty. So it took us 6 hours of our time to upload the videos, to do the witness reports. We then had 2 people booked out to go to court on that day. But he was then convicted and paid us £2.50. Now, I don't see the consequence there, and it isn't a retailer problem, and it isn't a police, and it isn't a court problem. It's the whole society. We've got to decide what do we want to do, and it isn't about retribution. It isn't about punishment. It's actually about us making sure that we have a society that I want to live in, that I want my children to live in, and collectively, I think we have all got to work together. And I really appreciate it's those words there. We do need to work together, because if we work together, then the good people will win.
You raised a really good point there, and I just want to put this. We are running out of time, but I want to put this to Matthew Barber. In terms of charges, how many of those charges actually turn into convictions? Because that's what Vince's talking about there.
Yeah, I completely agree. That is a big challenge. And it's not just which turn into convictions, but then what is the consequence of those convictions? What are the consequences for those criminals? That's not within the gift of the police. That's not within my gift as Police and Crime Commissioner. But we see too many cases going to court. I've got a list of cases at the moment where we've seen them go to court, they've pleaded guilty, and then they've been bailed ahead of sentencing. So you've got people who've already pleaded guilty to an offence who are going to be out there committing more crime in the run to prison.
OK, well, thank you, Matthew, for such a short and concise answer, because we were running out of time. But I really wanted to ask that question at the end there. That's Matthew Barber, Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner. Also joining us tonight, Vince Malone, shopkeeper from Tenby, and Michelle Whitehead, a convenience store worker, talking about the epidemic of shoplifting here in the UK. Thank you. Still to come on the programme, Liam Payne's One Direction bandmates attend his funeral in Buckinghamshire.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes,
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
The 4 remaining members of One Direction were amongst the mourners at Liam Payne's funeral today. The 31-year-old died last month after falling from a balcony in Argentina. Fans who gathered outside the church in Buckinghamshire said the singer would always hold a place in their hearts. Sky's Katie Spencer has this report.
An unthinkable day for those who knew and loved Liam Payne. Heartbreaking for his family, including his young son. The press abiding by the family's request to keep a respectful distance. His One Direction bandmates coming together in public for the saddest of circumstances, the death of one of their own. The congregation made up of some of the biggest names in music, many here all too familiar with the trials of navigating fame, something Payne had seemingly struggled to make peace with. Alongside Payne's family, his American girlfriend Kate Cassidy, who'd been with the star just days before his death. Fans by and large staying away, just a handful of people watching on.
Really sad day, it's just horrible. I feel so sorry for the family, it's just really not pleasant for them, is it?
A lot of us in our sort of like 20s, we grew up with One Direction, and I think, yeah, it's been a sad day for sure.
Having no regrets is all that she really wants.
After rising to fame on The X Factor, Payne was part of one of the most successful boy bands of all time. One Direction selling 70 million records during their 5-year career. While the singer found some success as a solo artist, he'd struggled to match those heights. But the adoration from those who grew up listening to his band songs never diminished and was seen in the response to his death from a 3rd-floor balcony of a Buenos Aires hotel. Prosecutors in recent weeks confirming 3 arrests have been made, including one individual charged with being complicit in the supply of drugs. The pain of it all wrought into his father's face, who'd travelled to Argentina to bring his son's body home. While fans of his from around the world have held their own vigils over the past few weeks, this service was for those closest to the singer. Many having since reflected on the great joy Liam Payne took in making other people happy, an inescapable sadness from family, friends and fans at all they've lost. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Still to come on the UK tonight, a warning from Harrods' newly appointed survivors advocate. The Mohammed Al Fayed's abuse likely extended far beyond the department store. And rising energy prices push up inflation. We'll take a look at what it means for you. Harrods' newly appointed survivors advocate has told Sky News she believes Mohammed Al Fayed's abuse extended far beyond the department store. Dame Jasvinda Sangera says around 290 people are involved in the claims process against the former Harrods owner, but she thinks there are many others who are yet to come forward. Well, I spoke to Dame Jasvinda and started by asking her how she'd been helping the survivors in this new role.
So I am only third week in the role, just to be clear about that. So the survivors only received a personal letter from me last week. So they're aware of me as well through the press as well. And currently in the Harrods process, there are 290 women. However, what I will say is view that with caution, because there will be, in my experience, many women out there who have yet to report. You know, there'll be many women who are sitting on their reporting for a number of reasons. We know it takes a lot of courage to disclose. Myself, I was a victim of sexual harassment and bullying by a very senior member in the House of Lords. It took me 12 years before I came forward and I reported. I get that. So, you know, I would say 290 absolutely in the process, but there may be more out there. And what I want to assure them is that when they come to me and talk to me, it is absolutely confidential.
A lot of the talk has been about compensation, but I'm sure you will have heard this, the victims that I've spoken to, money isn't the focus for them. So with that in mind, what is the cost to Harrods? Because, as you said, many may still not have come forward. They may do in the coming weeks, months, years. When we talk about Harrods' commitment to this, are they in for the long haul? Is there a time frame on this? A cap, money-wise?
Well, the first thing to say is that the breadth of Mohammed Fayed's abuse is so immense. I don't believe it's just Harrods employees. I believe that abuse took place in other places too. So what I want people to know is, if you are one of those people that was not an employee of Harrods, please don't think you can't access me, because you can. Okay, it's important you know that you're not going to be turned away. That's the first thing I would say. Now, Harrods have accepted vicarious liability. They're very clear about that, you know, and there will be no NDAs attached to any settlement at all. So that's important. I think they're absolutely right, survivors, in saying that, you know, they want things to improve. I am aware there is an internal review, and it is my intention to keep an eye on that too. In terms of our Harrods in this for the long haul, I believe so. You know, I can't say they're not. I believe they are.
A lot of people have asked just how independent Harrods' process is. Of course, they are a business. They have a reputation to protect. They have distanced themselves from Mohammed Al Fayed. But, you know, the question is, survivors coming to them under the Harrods name, how independent will their support be? Will their complaint process be? And are you confident that Harrods are being open enough to know that this culture does not exist? They say it's a very different place to work now, and we're taking their word for it. Is this something you will explore to make sure that that is the case?
I absolutely will be exploring what the changes look like and the evidence of change as well. But going back to your other point in terms of independence, survivors don't have to go directly to Harrods. That's the first thing I want to make very clear here. You have an independent voice now, and that's me. So if at the start of the process you want to talk to me first, you have that. Harrods, and I totally understand that you may not wish to go to the very organisation, you know, who you see as responsible for that harm, because that's how survivors will experience it. MPL Legal is the law firm where I understand survivors are going to. So, you know, they have contractors in the law firm. There is no reason why today a survivor out there listening to me has to go to Harrods directly if they don't want to.
We always tend to hear about these kind of perpetrators who operate on a large scale after their deaths, or in the historical sense, described as an historical abuse. But corporate sexual abuse is probably happening as we speak now in companies in the UK and globally. So I suppose the big question is, and I'm sure you consider this a lot as part of your work, is how do we make those workplaces safe for victims now who are going through this experience tonight?
Well, I completely agree with everything you're saying there. And the one thing I will say to all these corporate organisations out there and other organisations is, don't wait for something to happen. Start having this conversation right now. Okay, Harrods have developed this. They've had to respond to what they are now aware of. You don't have to do that. You can start to be proactive and start having the conversations about sexual harassment, sexual abuse, bystander training, sexual harassment training. You can think about that as an organisation and put the reporting mechanisms in place for people to feel safe to report. I'll go back again to my experience with the House of Lords. When I reported sexual harassment and bullying back in 2018, they had no processes to deal with me, nothing. As a result of that very complaint, there was an independent inquiry. Now they have a clear process. They have a helpline internally. You know, more survivors are reporting. The point is, once you start having the conversation and victims feel safe to report because you're creating that environment, they will report. But don't wait for something to happen. Do it now.
Well, Harrods have pointed us to their previous statement on the claims surrounding Mohammed Al-Fayed, saying the Harrods of today is a very different organisation to the one owned and controlled by Fayed between 1985 and 2010. It is one that seeks to put the welfare of our employees at the heart of everything we do. It goes on to say, while we cannot undo the past, we have been determined to do the right thing as an organisation, driven by the values we hold today, while ensuring that such behaviour can never be repeated in the future. A rise in energy bills has pushed inflation to its highest rate for 6 months, reducing hopes of another interest rate cut before the end of the year. Our business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan has been taking a look at what it means for you and your finances.
We're meant to have turned the page on the cost of living crisis. But for many people here at this library in East London, the story feels familiar. They're sheltering from the cold. Energy bills are rising. Inflation is back above the Bank of England's target.
We've obviously got a high degree of disposable income being spent on rent. The next one often is fuel. And there is not much left in terms of just putting food on the table.
There's quite a number of people around to have a chat with, you know, especially with the warm haven, where we get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee.
We can't do on the heaters always in the home. So after school is finished, we coming here and we a little bit spend here.
30 to 40 people come here after school every day. They can get a hot drink and keep warm. But the government says it has things under control.
Well, we know that the cost of living continues to be a problem for working families across the country, but gone are the days when inflation was at 10, 11%, driving family bills through the roof. The good news is that inflation is stable, it's close to target, and that will be good for working families across the country.
But when it comes to inflation, is Labour risking the recovery?
Labour's first budget increased investment spending, a big cash injection into the economy. It's also raising employers' national insurance contributions. Businesses say they will raise prices as a result.
At the moment, there are months when some of our suppliers are going unpaid, you know, for as long as they will allow. And it's literally pinching from here to pay someone else when we can. And it wasn't this bad before. It's becoming really dire. It's only by the grace of God that we're keeping afloat right now.
The Tories say the government is playing with fire.
I think what is most important now is, as we look forward over the coming years, what is the trajectory of inflation like to be like? And the independent forecaster, the Office for Budget Responsibility, tells us that it will be higher in every year as a consequence of the measures taken by this government.
The government is sanguine about inflation. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that the public can't afford for policymakers to be complacent. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
Coming up on the UK Tonight, the warning to Wicked fans not to sing in the cinema. And Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola signs a contract extension. We're joined by Sky Sports presenter Will Perry next.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Maitai village on the front line.
Firing the civilian and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
This may be the Premier League.
I'm not like everybody else.
Well, this duo have been in a league of their own. It's Haaland, a striker like no other.
Not like everybody else.
Son, Starman for Tottenham Hotspur.
Like everybody else.
That's just stunning. Wow!
Everybody else. Like everybody else. Like everybody else.
Manchester City, Tottenham on NBC and Peacock.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, cinemas are issuing warnings to Wicked fans ahead of the UK release this weekend. We'll tell you all about it in a few minutes' time. But first, we're going to talk about the sport. Will is here this evening. Good to see you, Will. And some great news for Manchester City fans. Pep Guardiola staying a little longer.
Great news for Manchester City fans. Probably not great news for the rest of the football world who've been dreading this news. But yeah, the City fans, news that they've been absolutely longing, really, particularly because they've been in tricky form recently as well. They've lost 4 on the bounce. That's never happened since 2006. The first time in Pep's career that he's lost 4 games on the bounce. But nothing official yet from Manchester City. We're expecting this news tomorrow morning. But it'll be a 1-year contract extension with an option for a 2nd year. And interestingly, The Guardian today, Jamie Jackson reporting that there's no relegation clause in there as well. So should Manchester City be deducted points, given that they're in this ongoing hearing for 115 charges.
On,
so say, for example, they were given a 50-point deduction and, sent down to the Championship.
Could you imagine?
Well, it would probably be unheard of, wouldn't it? And that's the last thing the Premier League would actually want to do. They'd be shooting themselves in the face and the foot. But the clause is that Pep would not be able to leave within that contract because of the relegation clause. I mean, look, Manchester City, if Pep wanted to leave, I'm sure would let him. But it's huge news for City, isn't it? Bearing in mind they're 5 points off Liverpool. They play Liverpool on the 1st of December in 11 days' time. Just the news at just the right time, really.
Yeah. What is the long-term plan, do you think, for Pep? Because obviously when the England job came up, he was linked to that and, there were sort of reports that he was actually first choice. How long could he stay at Manchester City for? Or are there other options for him? Because he's done so much, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think, where could he go next?
Well, he's only 53 as well, you think, Pep Guardiola, and he's won absolutely everything. At Manchester City, he's won 18 trophies, 6 Premier League titles, the Champions League, a couple of FA Cups as well. Interestingly, the timing of this would take him right up to the summer of 2026, so the summer of the World Cup starting. So in theory, he could go straight into taking charge of a nation. Obviously not England, with Thomas Tuchel now in charge there, but another nation, which is what he wants to do, apparently. Go and manage
bingo card.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, he's got that option for the 2nd year. So no one thought he was going to stay there for the 8 years that he's been there already. This will take him up to 10, which is incredible, a decade at the Etihad Stadium. Here's what's coming up in the rest of the sport, SJ.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Two England internationals. One, in theory, delicious recipe. One fierce cooking challenge to mark the ECB's Taste of Cricket campaign. What could possibly go wrong?
Here in the kitchen, Jamie and Izzy making, Izzy?
Banana pancakes.
Which apparently is your recipe, which seems unfair on Jamie.
Only if it's good.
Given that this is your recipe, I want some tips for him before we start.
There isn't really any measurements.
Good start.
Just kind
this
of
is encouraging.
Go on feel.
So, banana pancakes on the menu, and Izzy taking a loose approach to both methods and measurements.
It's like they say vanilla's like the garlic of baking. Vanilla extract is to baking what garlic is to cooking. If it says 3, put in 6.
When you say they, who is they?
Just people.
People.
Yeah.
Cooking people.
At all levels, cricket and cuisine are intrinsically linked. For the pros, it's all about being well fueled for a long day in the fields.
Literally 6, 7, 8 hours of cricket in a day. Need your carbs, need your good nutrition. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you've got to use the food to perform as best as you can.
Away from the top table, though, the English cricket tea forms the staple diet of summer Saturdays up and down the country. The ECB celebrated all sorts of communities and cookery this year and rewarded those clubs that have excelled in terms of inclusion, with the social element always right at the heart of things.
Tea's like you play a hard game, cricket, and it's just about coming together at tea, socialising with your mates, socialising with the opposition, and having a bite to.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Now, movie fans are being warned not to sing along to the new Wicked film in cinemas. The musical adaptation is being released here in the UK on Friday, but people who may be tempted to join in are being reminded that silence is golden. Signs have been popping up in cinemas around the world where Wicked has already been released, asking viewers not to sing along to allow everyone to enjoy the cinema experience. Well, let's speak now to chief film critic at the Metro newspaper, Larushka Ivanzada. Larushka, I mean, what's your view on this? This is a musical that's well known, has a huge following of fans who know the songs inside out. Yeah. Some of them are going to be able to resist, are they?
I know, I'm sure some people won't be able to resist. And part of me was, when I first heard that announcement, was like, oh, what a fun sponge thing to say. Surely everyone wants to sing along when they go and see a film like this. And then you take a step back and think, yeah, but if everyone's singing along in a completely tuneless way, that will perhaps maybe not enhance the experience for everybody in the cinema. And maybe they should wait. I'm sure there will be sing-along screenings that come along. I mean, it's inevitable with a movie like this. It's going to be, it's almost guaranteed phenomenal success, this film. There will be sing-along screenings.
Yeah, it's released nationwide on Friday. You went to the premiere. Anyone singing along there? Because Ariana Grande obviously is one of the stars and she can really sing. So it would be a brave audience member to sing along at the premiere, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. I think perhaps that's why I didn't notice anybody singing along there. The only sort of annoying audience participation was the fact that everybody was dressed up. So there were sort of huge people wearing huge skirts or enormous headpieces, and you couldn't really see around people or in the premiere because everyone was wearing these insanely beautiful costumes that they'd all created at home. So there was that level of audience participation. But yeah, it's a brave person who'd sit next to Ariana Grande and sing along. Yes. And I did notice, actually, she posted this morning on Instagram saying to her fans, as a fellow Wicked fan, it is more than comprehensible to hear that a lot of you wish to sing along to the movie. But for the time being, while the movie is strictly showing in the theatres, it is my greatest wish that everyone who has purchased tickets can fully and comfortably finish the movie with minimal distractions. So she, you know, the grand Ariana Grande herself has advised her fans very politely, as you heard that, to perhaps be quiet while they're watching the film in the cinema.
It's exactly what you'd expect from Glinda the Good Witch, isn't it? But I also looked at social media to fans' response to this, and a lot of them were saying, the film is so loud when the musical numbers come on. No one's going to notice if I sing, try and stop me. But there have been instances of this before. I remember actually reporting on Sky News about an incident at a theatre, I think it was in Manchester, where The Bodyguard was touring. And there was effectively a mini riot with some women singing along. I mean, we all know the Bodyguard soundtrack, Whitney Houston, incredible. They were singing along and the police were actually called. So this does happen. It can be a problem.
I know perhaps people will actually appreciate the guidance because it does sort of lay a boundary. I mean, I think we've all been in the cinema when people have been, you know, on their phones, like literally speaking on the phone during the cinema. And if there has been a notice beforehand that actually that is perhaps not polite behaviour, then, you know, people feel a bit more justified in saying to people, excuse me, would you mind not doing that?
OK. Well, I have seen the musical. I'm looking forward to the film. Is it as good as everyone's saying it is, Larishka? You've had a preview.
Yes, it is fantastic. And I think if you are a fan of musicals, you will love this. It really is sensational. And I think it's going to be a massive smash this Christmas and beyond. I think it's going to be one of those films like The Greatest Showman that's just played again and again and again.
Oh, yeah, one of the favourites in my house, The Greatest Showman. And what I discovered today, something I didn't know about Wicked, is there's a part 2 coming. It's only part 1 that's been released in the cinema this week. OK, Larishka, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Larishka, definitely not singing along in the cinema. Let us know if you break the rules. Maybe send a video. Or breaking all kinds of cinema etiquette. Let's move on to the weather, shall we? Rain attempting to push into the southwest tomorrow. It's going to give a spell of hill snow for Southern Ireland and the southwest. A further storm system expected at the weekend. That's also going to bring some disruption from heavy rain, snow and strong gusty winds. This evening, it's a largely dry picture across the UK mainland, with temperatures dropping sharply after dark, a widespread and severe frost for most of us, with some icy stretches on untreated roads and pavements. Get your de-icer ready for the morning. That is all from us for tonight. We're back tomorrow night at 8. See you then.